All right, guys, part 2 of the tank and paint refinishing segment. Okay, as you can see, this is about as nice as it can get. However, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to paint work. So if you look, you can see a couple specks here, see a little bit of trash, and that's all due to me having an inadequate paint boot. So what I do, I'm gonna wet sand. So I get a little speck here, and I want to get rid of all that stuff. So what I'm going to be doing, I am going to be wet sanding with a regular 2000 grit sandpaper, and this is just a 3M wet dry, and soapy water, a little soapy water mix here. And I'm also going to be doing a wet sand with a 5000 grit Trizac 3M pad. This is a little foam pad. Very simple process. Basically, just wet sand until you get beyond the surface of it, and from there you can go ahead and buff and compound. So I'm going to show you the whole process. Then I'm going to probably skip a step, which is like the buffing step, and I'll come back to the decals. So what I like to do, my hands are better than my eyes. So past my hands, soapy water, and I can feel every little piece of trash at that point, just like washing your car when you get a bug stuck on it. So at this point, I'm gonna go with the 2000, past my hand, and you could just go over the whole tank, because this is where the automotive refinishers get all the orange peel out. Now, I don't really have a problem with orange peel, but I do have a problem with trash. So this is why I do this process. So every little piece of trash I feel, pretty much rub it till I don't feel anymore. And from there, I'm gonna come back, hit it with a 5000, because this cut's pretty deep. A 2000, even though it don't seem like it, this is a heavy cut for paint. And if this was black, this would be full of swirl marks. White hides a lot, but black, dark colors, metallics, very unforgiving. So it's a very simple process. This is the one that a lot of amateur paint guys are scared of, because they don't want to burn through the finish with their buffing and compounding. I've done so many of these tanks. We probably do 200 tanks a year in this shop, in between 4 restorations. So I know what areas to pretty much avoid. So that's for my 2000 grit. That's it. Now take the 5000, also wet. What this does, it basically gives my buffing process a lot more leniency. I can buff a lot less because this actually lays the finish down again. 5000 grit basically feels like just a cloth almost. It doesn't even feel like it's sandpaper, but it does amazing. Whenever you dry it, you can see that the tank itself is going to be basically no more shine to it. I'm pulling all the gloss off, and then when you do the buffing compound, that brings all your gloss back. So that's about as easy as it gets for the sanding process. Let me grab some paper towels, and from here we dry it up, look it over one quick time, and then start the buffing. Show you guys. You can see here, now you can see how dull it is. It takes away all the sheen. So in the cracks here, you can see a little sand marks. I'm gonna touch that again with the 5000 as well as here. But basically it takes all the sheen out of this tank. So I'm gonna go over it 5000 one more time, and then I'm gonna go ahead and buff it. And I'm just hitting a few key spots right now with the 5000 that I didn't quite press hard enough. It's hard to see wet, but once you dry it, you can see. And all this does, I mean, I could buff over the 2000, but with the 5, it makes my buffing a whole lot easier. You, instead of going 2, 3, 4 coats or 4 rounds of buffing, I'll be able to do it in probably 2, maybe even 1. It just, the 5000 does you basically your first step of the buffing process. All right, here we go. I'm gonna start the buffing shortly. All right, this is what I use, McGuire's Ultra Cut Compound. Actually, I'm wrong. This is my heavy cut. This is when I don't want to do, when I need to cut a really bad orange peel. This is what I use. So that's the wrong one for this process. This one's the ultra fine, and that's what I need. It's a lower cut. I don't want to go heavy cut because all it does is give you more swirls. Then you got to come back with this anyway. So I got my wool buffing, no, I'm sorry, my white foam buffing pad. Put a little bit on the pad and pretty much set my gun, my buffing machine to about 1200 and just start laying in it. This process here is a very important one. You don't want to be missing anything because in fluorescent lighting, it might look like you're done. You're going to take this thing out in sunlight and you're going to have swirls for days. So take your time. You don't want to go too fast. You don't want to go too slow. And just take your time and do the whole thing. Wipe it down, a little soapy water. And then don't be afraid to go over it 2 or 3 times. This is where spending the extra time will make it way worth it in the long run. Add a little more compound. All right, so that is it for my first buffing phase. Now, this is something silly, but good to know. I use a regular Bounty paper towel to do the wipe down because I find Bounty doesn't fall apart, silly as it is, and cheap paper towels do. So when you're doing this, you don't want clumps of paper towels everywhere. I mean, I basically just wipe it down, a little bit of soapy water again, and it gets all the residue off. You can see the residue's red on it, which no big deal. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wipe it, dry it, look at it again, and if it's good, we're gonna move on to decals. If it's not, we're gonna buff it again until it is good. Now, I'm looking at it. This is about as good as I feel I need to get. I mean, it's essentially like glass now. For a white tank, you can reflect off of it and pretty much see the reflection of whatever you need in it. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the decal process now. All right, here is the decal segment. So basically, a little bit of Dawn soapy water mix. Give it a light mist, find your appropriate decal, which is this case is a 86 350X. soapy mist. And on these, decal's supposed to line up just about center here, and bottom level here, and level here. So what I do, I put it in the right spot, get a little spot in the middle touching, and then slowly squeegee it out from the center. And you squeegee it basically every direction to get all the water out. Be pretty firm with it. And then when you peel your transfer paper, you just slowly pull it backwards. Pretty simple process. Another part that everybody's scared of for some reason. And then just get your soapy water out and let it cure. Same thing goes for the rest. Soapy water. Find your decal. And find center. Oh, there we go. This process is no different than squeegeeing a window. You're just trying to get all the water and droplets out. Peel your transfer paper as much back as possible, that way it doesn't pull. And last but not least, number 3. I'm going center of the letters to the center of the bolt hole, and then about a 1/4 inch gap here, and level with level. Looks about spot on. So start at the center so it doesn't jump around. Do a light squeegee. Squeegee the water, and voila, we have a freshly decaled 1986 ATC 350X tank. The end.